Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast in association with MMA Play 365. I'm your host as always, Newson, with your co-host John, and tonight we're back again to break down UFC on ESPN 3 from Minneapolis, Minnesota. John, welcome back. How are you doing tonight, man?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. Seems like ages since we've been talking fights together. Obviously, I was away last week. We had a week off prior to that. So yeah, man, looking forward to getting straight back into it and talking fights.
Absolutely, and just before we start, I just want to apologise if, my voice is a little croaky. I'm not too well. You're not too well either, John, but...
No, a bit of a bad throat, but we battle on.
Absolutely, man. And before we start, I just want to mention MMA Play 365. MMA Play 365 is a brand new betting advice platform that is officially launching next week. We have a solid team behind the platform which we believe is unique and provides subscribers with a lot more than what your usual tout delivers, and also what I used to deliver under the betting segment of Newsome MMA. As I've already alluded to, it's a subscription-based platform, but one that is absolutely affordable for everybody. And even though the pricing is more than fair, we are going to be opening up with an amazing offer for the first 1,000 people who subscribe to MMA Play 365. So whether you're a serious long-term gambler or just a huge fan of MMA that likes to bet for fun on the night, MMA Play 365 is absolutely for you. So keep your eyes out for the launch offer by following MMA Play 365 over on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. So with that said, let's break down some fights at UFC Minneapolis, and we enter the Showtime Fights. The first Showtime fight tonight is in the main event of the evening, the clash of the Titans in the heavyweight division. We've got Francis Ngannou versus Junior Dos Santos. John, who have you got?
Yeah, how could we not open up with this without this heavyweight main event? It's a fantastic fight, one that I'm really looking forward to seeing. Obviously, we saw that the main event was changed originally, but man, we've got an equally exciting replacement with Dos Santos against Ngannou. For me, this is the ultimate technique versus pure strength and power battle between two guys who are riding a bit of a crest of a wave again. Obviously, we know Ngannou had his issues a few fights ago. The loss to Miocic where he got dominated, and Derek Lewis. But man, his last two fights against Curtis Blades and Cain Velasquez, he's been the Francis Ngannou of old, getting them both out of there. First round knockouts. Total time in the octagon around a minute and 1 second between those, or a minute 10 seconds, sorry, between those two fights, and yeah, I think we're seeing the old Francis Ngannou, and it's going to be really interesting to see, actually, because I think I read the other day that he's switched up his camps. I believe he's been training Extreme Couture for this fight. His old head trainer hasn't had any involvement, from what I read, in this camp. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Ngannou comes out, and whether that switch of camp has what kind of difference it's made, whether it's changed his approach to fight, whether it makes him more dangerous, less dangerous. I don't know. I don't know if it's possible for him to get any more dangerous than he already is. But he's going up against a wily veteran in Junior Dos Santos, and I think we both know how these two guys are going to try and play it. I think Dos Santos is going to back up. I think he's going to try and use that jab, the 1-2s. I think he's going to try and circle off the fence when he gets backed up, and then he's going to try and counter Ngannou whenever he can. But Ngannou, more often than not, comes powering forward, winging those bombs, throwing hands. He doesn't just throw 1s and 2s. Well, he throws them in 3s and 4s. We saw that in the victory against Alistair Overeem, where he was swinging wildly and eventually then nearly took his head off with about the 3rd or 4th punch that he threw in that combination. And for me, it's going to be really interesting to see whether Junior Dos Santos can utilise that tactic of his for the entirety of this fight. Obviously, we know Ngannou's most dangerous in the first round, maybe first 2 rounds. If Dos Santos can keep it at range and keep Ngannou off him and circle off on the fence and just keep rinse and repeating that, it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. I don't think he's going to try and take Ngannou down. I think Ngannou's also learned from that Miocic fight and has improved his wrestling quite significantly. We did see in the Dos Santos fights against Lewis and Tuivasa, he can still get caught sometimes. We've said it before about Dos Santos. People talk about his chin and things like that, but I mean, he's only got 4 or 5 losses on his record. I think it's 4 in the UFC. Yes, they have all come via Three of them, sorry, via stoppage, and the one decision loss to Velasquez. But I think his chin's still there, man. It's just a heavyweight division, and anyone can finish anyone on any given day. Now, with all that I've just said, I do think we're going to see Francis Ngannou land on Dos Santos. I think he's going to back him up against the fence, and even if Dos Santos could circle out 2 or 3 times, I think at some point throughout the first round or two, I think that Ngannou's going to he's going to catch him with something, and I think that when he does catch him, I think it's going to hurt him, and you can't take too many of those shots from Ngannou, not because his chin's gone, but just because nobody can. We saw that with Velasquez, who's notorious for having a tough chin. Curtis Blades as well. I mean, he's putting all these guys away. He's putting them away early, and yeah, I do think Francis Ngannou is going to be able to catch him throwing one of those wild combinations, and it's going to be when Dos Santos is backed up against the fence. So yeah, I see Ngannou putting him away. I see him putting him away within 2 rounds. I'm going Ngannou to win this fight via knockout.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good fight, and it's also going to be a really good fight from a game plan perspective, because although it's a relatively straightforward fight to break down, with there being sort of no wrestling, or I don't envisage any wrestling playing a part in this fight anyway. So even though it's two strikers, it's a little bit more straightforward to break down, because we're not, like I say, considering all disciplines of MMA. But the game plans are really interesting, because Junior Dos Santos isn't going to come forward heavily. He's going to be the one, I would imagine, on the back foot, popping that jab out. I've said this time and time again when I break down Junior Dos Santos fights, the exits and the angles that he uses to get himself away from the cage is so expert. It's at such a high level. I think he's one of the best fighters in the UFC to do that for sure. Now, how you beat that is you've got to cut those angles off whilst pressuring him, whilst throwing volume. And I swear, if you go back and listen to all my other breakdowns that I've done on podcasts with JDS, I'll say exactly the same thing time and time again, because that is how you beat him, but it's much easier said than done. The one fighter that did it so well was Stipe Miocic.
Yeah.
In fact, he was the perfect guy for it. Great footwork, great cut-offs, forward pressure, volume. And because of that, he finished JDS in the first round, and that's how you do it. Now, this is going to be a real test for Ngannou, because Ngannou, yes, he's got the power, yes, he's got the explosiveness, persistence. He'll throw in volume as well, unless he's fighting Derek Lewis. But it's a real test from a footwork perspective, because I don't think that he's fought many fighters like Dos Santos. And in fact, even though some fighters do back off, well, most fighters back off, the way he normally knocks the fighters out is when they engage with him. But JDS, I don't think will openly engage, and if he does, I think that'll be a bad move, because he'll get knocked out really easily. So I think Dos Santos will happily play a 25-minute fight, being on the back foot, popping a jab out, popping a few jabs to the body, and just staying away from danger. So it's going to have to be up to Ngannou to make sure that, like I said, not only is he moving forward, he doesn't get frustrated, he can put a little bit of volume in there, but the most important thing, he's got to do that whilst cutting angles as well, and that's going to be the real test for me in this fight. I don't think it's as simple as just saying, yeah, JDS is a good technician, he's good on, he's good with his boxing on the feet defensively and offensively as well, but Ngannou's got 25 minutes to catch him, and he'll probably catch him once throughout the 25 minutes and put him away. I don't think it's as easy as breaking it down like that. I think there's got to be a lot of strategy going into Ngannou's movement and footwork. And if he can do that, if he's developing his striking game, and like you mentioned, John, he's an extreme couture now as well. So if he can tweak that offensive boxing, in, like I said, in regards to the footwork, I think that he will be able to catch JDS. But man, he's got to not rush. He's got to not throw air shots, waste energy, overcommit in times where he shouldn't overcommit. He's got to fight a really, really smart fight. And again, another angle that it's interesting from as well is they both they were both the peak of the game, and then they both sort of went on a little bit of a losing streak, and people were like, oh, okay, is he actually the fighter that we thought he was? And now they're both on doing great things on form. Curtis Blades, who I tipped to be a heavyweight champion, UFC heavyweight champion at some point, which I do believe he will be, knocked out in round 1. And then in his last fight against Cain Velasquez, yes, it wasn't the same Cain Velasquez, but still, it was Cain Velasquez knocked him out in round 1 as he was shooting him for a takedown. Junior Dos Santos is coming off 2 back-to-back knockouts for the first time since like 4 or 5 years ago. So, it's a really good fight from so many different angles. But I do think Ngannou's going to get the win. I do think that JDS does make mistakes. So yes, he's at an expert level with his movement, his angles, his exits, all the things that I've just spoken about. But he does make mistakes. He's a human being. He doesn't perfect his expertise at 100%. Nobody can. We saw mistakes against Taito Ivasa. Taito Ivasa rocked him. He also got hit a couple of times with Derek Lewis as well. I was surprised that he wasn't badly hurt from any of those shots.
Yeah.
Ngannou's a different beast, though, when he's punching you. If you're going to make a mistake against Ngannou, he's going to sleep you. And that's exactly what I think happens. I do think that JDS has a good first round, maybe a good second round. I do think we see a patient Ngannou. He's going to know that, he's got to know that he can't get JDS out of there early. Well, he could do if he lands, but it's going to be tough. I don't think he gets him out of there in the first round. Unless he does swing a bomb and it does happen to catch him. But I do think JDS is going to be sharp for that first round, maybe part of the second round or all of the second round. But again, I just see Ngannou making adjustments inside the cage. I see JDS making a slight mistake, and I see Ngannou sleeping him. So I've got Francis Ngannou to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. Now, in the next Showtime fight, and this is an awesome fight for me. This should be an interim title on the line here. We've got Jussier Formiga versus Joe Benavidez. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. This is a really intriguing fight, a really exciting fight, one I'm really looking forward to. And I agree that it should be an interim title fight, because obviously we don't know what's going to happen with Cejudo, when he's going to return, whether the flyweight division is going to continue, nothing like that. But yeah, definitely, I think this should be the interim title on the line for this one. But it's an art. We're only getting 3 rounds of this fight, but I think it's going to be an action-packed 3 rounds. I mean, we know Jussier Formiga does his best work on the ground, especially when he takes you back. He's very dangerous. Got multiple wins via rear naked choke. And as soon as you give up your back to this guy, it's more often not game over. So got to be really careful of that for number one. But one thing I was very impressed about with Formiga is the improvements in his striking game as well. We saw that in his last fight against Davison Figueiredo. First round, he looked really good on the feet. Second round, Figueiredo started to get back into it a bit more. But that's when Formiga really showed off his variety of wrestling and his timings of his takedowns. He was working the single leg, ducked under for the double leg. Either or, he can take you down. So you've got to be very careful and watch out for that timing of Formiga. But saying that, Joe Benavidez is a good guy off his back. He knows how to scramble and get back to his feet quickly. You can take this guy down. I mean, Joe Benavidez has been taken down several times in his career. I mean, when you look back, he was taken down about 3 times by Ortiz. He was taken down when he fought Zach Makowski. I think it was 4 times. Tim Elliott took him down 2 or 3 times as well. So you can get this guy to the ground. So it'd be that for me is why it's a really interesting fight, because I think Joe B has the better boxing. He's better fighter standing, although Formiga is improving. I still think Benavidez is the better fighter. He's definitely the more active fighter of the two on the feet as well. Cuts nice angles and throws that 1-2 nice. And he was starting to use those low calf kicks against Dustin Ortiz as well, which Ortiz started to become aware of. So it's going to be really interesting to see how often Formiga shoots for a takedown, whether he's comfortable to stay standing with Benavidez, whether he thinks he can defeat him in the stand-up exchanges, whether he takes him down and can hold Joseph Benavidez down. It's going to be really interesting because I've also forgot to mention Benavidez has got a good offensive wrestling game as well. He did get taken down 3 times by Ortiz, but he took Ortiz down 7 times himself. So will Ortiz shoot for the takedown? Sorry, will Benavidez shoot for the takedown? All these things are running through my mind when I'm looking at this fight, and yeah, I'm really excited for this. And for me, I think Joseph Benavidez is going to get the win. I could see it being a real close back and forth fight. I think it's going to go the distance. I see Formiga taking Benavidez down 3 or 4 times throughout the entirety of the fight, possibly more. But like I said, if Benavidez can get back to his feet quickly and by taking minimal damage, and then if he can start working his offensive boxing and piecing Formiga up on the feet, and then if he can throw in a takedown himself as well, and maybe get the fight to the mat, and like I said, I think it's just going to be a whole load of scrambles. I think there's going to be action, but I think both guys are going to go for takedowns. I think both guys are going to be on their back at some point in the fight. But for me, I just think Benavidez is that more active fighter. I think he's, especially of the two standing in the stand-up exchanges, I think Benavidez will throw more often, throw more combinations. As I said, I did like Formiga's movement against Figueiredo, but I'm a big fan of Joe B's offensive movement, his footwork, his offensive boxing. I do think he'll be able to connect with Formiga. One thing he just has to be careful of is not overcommitting and giving up that takedown too easily. Like I said, Formiga can shoot the double or the single leg and take you down, as he evidenced in the Figueiredo fight. But yeah, ultimately, after that back and forth battle, I think it's going to be a real close decision. Wouldn't be surprised if the three judges, 2 of them saw it one way, 1 of them saw it the other. But I do think Joe B is going to snatch this. I'm going with Joseph Benavidez to win an extremely tight decision. But I do think he will just do enough on the feet, and he will be able to keep himself off his back for long enough to just get the nod in the judges' eyes. So I've got Joseph Benavidez to win this fight via decision.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really fun fight as well. And like I touched upon when I introduced the fight, I do think the UFC should have definitely changed it to be an interim title fight, because, as we've already mentioned, Cejudo out potentially early 2020. Dana White's already come out and said that the flyweight division will remain, which is a bit strange to why he let half of the division go, and it was more on the good half than the bad half. So that's a little bit strange, but ultimately with the champion out, and also he's the champ, so he's going to be considering bantamweight as well, and who he defends his title against in that division. It should have definitely been an interim title fight in my eyes. And also, I think this fight is going to go to a decision, 3 rounds. 5 rounds would be even more interesting as well. So yeah, I'm a little disappointed that the UFC haven't addressed that for this one, and maybe they haven't addressed it because they wanted the main event as Ngannou and JDS, so that could play a part. But
yeah,
to the fight itself, like I say, I think it's going to be a fun fight. But unfortunately, for when you're looking at the way the rounds are going to be scored, I do think it is going to be really one-sided. So I'm not saying it's not going to be competitive, because I do think both fighters will make it a competitive fight. But I just feel that it's going to be one of those fights that's going to be that is going to be a little bit back and forth, that is going to be exciting, fast-paced, but someone's going to win 30-27, and I think that person's going to be Joe Benavidez. I've give all props to Formiga for how far he's built his way up in the rankings. You know, he's fought some good guys along the way. His last loss was to Ray Borg back in 2017, and since then he's racked a 4-fight win streak. Sasaki, Engin, Sergio Pettis, Davison Figueiredo. Figueiredo especially was a really good win, because a lot of people were high on him, including myself, and I still am, and, you know, rightly so. He's a good fighter, but, you know, he was just outclassed by a really on-form, improved Formiga. You know, the move to American top team really served him well, really got his striking game down, which is what he needed to do. But ultimately, the way he wins fights is by scoring the takedowns, is by securing top control time, submission attempts, and just looking to dominate the fight on the mat. Where he is left striking with a good striker, he can sometimes come up short. Like I say, his striking has improved, being over at ATT, but, you know, there's still much better strikers in that division than Formiga. So he will always rely on his wrestling and his grappling, to take over fights and make that decision decisive. But this is a problem here in the Joe Benavidez fight, because I don't think he can out wrestle Joe Benavidez. He may take him down, he may score a trip or something like that and get him down momentarily, but like a jack in the box, Joe B will be straight back to his feet. Joe Benavidez is so hard to take down, so difficult to take down, but when you can take him down, he's even harder to keep down. You'll not see a fight where especially in 2019, you'll not see a fight where Joe Benavidez is taken down and someone secures 90 seconds or 2 minutes on top of him. You won't see that, because he's just so good in the scramble. He's so good at finding a way back up to his feet, and like I say, his wrestling's really good as well. So I think Formiga is in a spot of bother in this fight, I'll be honest, because where he flourishes is where Benavidez is so good defensively. So it's going to be tough. And then when you look at Benavidez's offensive wrestling and you look at Formiga off his back, Formiga isn't the type of guy to be throwing up a load of triangles and armbars. Sure, he could get those submissions, but he's typically not got the dexterity to do that. So I feel that if Joe Benavidez takes him down, I think that he could have a little bit of success on top of Formiga. And we saw Ray Borg have some success on top of Formiga. Ultimately, that's what ended up winning him that fight in the end. So it can be done. And like I say, Joe B his wrestling's good, his grappling's good as well, offensively. So I just feel that, like I say, where Formiga trumps fighters, Joe Benavidez is very, very good in those positions, defensively and offensively. Then you look at the striking. Yes, Formiga, as I've already mentioned, has improved his striking, but Joe Benavidez is awkward and quick, and sometimes he disrespects his opponent's strike, and we saw that with Sergio Pettis. He was leaning out with his he was overextending with his chin out on his punches and stuff like that, really disrespecting the striking of Pettis. But it was one of those fights where Joe Benavidez lost, and we all thought that he might have started to decline, but it probably just looks to me that he's had the off night, because he's come back after that, smoked Alex Perez, who again is a top fighter, beat Dustin Ortiz comfortably as well, who again top fighter, good form. So I don't think he's declining. I think his striking is really good. Like I said, angles, lateral movement, side to side, quick in and out, combinations. I just feel that Joe Benavidez has got every angle of this fight covered, no matter where it goes. Like I say, I actually hope I'm wrong. I actually hope it's a much closer fight than I'm thinking it's going to be. But like I say, it's a great stylistic matchup for Joe Benavidez, and I want to see that. I want to see that second fight with Benavidez and Cejudo, because there was a lot of controversy over that decision as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, for this fight, I'm going Joe Benavidez to win, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. Now, in the last Showtime fight, this is one you picked, John. We've got Drew Dober against Marco Polo Reyes. Who have you got?
Yeah, I just thought I'd pick this fight as one of the Showtime fights, because I think it's going to be a really fun and entertaining brawl. Both these guys, obviously, coming into the fight off the back of losses, but we know that both these guys like to stand and bang, have power. They're two tough guys, strong guys. We've seen that Reyes record. Obviously, he defeated Matt Frivola fight before last, 1 minute into the first round with a brutal knockout in a 1 minute war between the two of them. He beat Dalcha Lungiambula as well by punches, UFC 199. That was later on in the fight, though, round 3. And Cesar Arzamendia, he also defeated in the first round. I know we're going back a few years for that, but yeah, he likes to stand there, he likes to trade, and I think that's what he thought he was going to get in the last fight with Damir Hadzovic, because Hadzovic also doesn't mind standing there and trading with guys, but Hadzovic came in with a very clever game plan, took down Polo Reyes, and Reyes didn't really seem to have an answer for it, and Hadzovic beat him up with the ground and pound in the second round, and again, Drew Dober is a tough guy, man. He also will just do exactly the same thing as that I've just mentioned. He'll stand there, he'll bang with you, he won't take a backward step. We saw that in the wins over Frank Camacho, John Tuck. In the Dariush fight, I mean, he was all up in Dariush's face. He had a really good first round, rocking Dariush a few times. I know people question Dariush's chin, whether it's gone after the Hernandez fight, but he managed to stay in there. And that Dober fight against Dariush for me was just a real, just a lapse in fight IQ, a lapse in concentration, because Dariush had threatened with the submissions in the second round. Dober had managed to get himself out of there, had the chance to just disengage and move back to the centre of the cage, and he tried to, I think if I remember rightly, he tried to take Dariush's back, and Dariush reversed it and ended up locking on that nasty armbar and getting the win. But yeah, I think and straight away you saw on Dober's face he was kicking himself over that, because it was obviously just a lapse in concentration. But yeah, this far I can see the two of them, like I said, just meeting in the middle and throwing hands. Both these guys have throw multiple strikes per minute. If you look, I think Polo Reyes is over 6 strikes per minute. Drew Dober's coming up to 4.5. And for me, Dober can win this fight if he fights sensibly and fights in a similar way to Hadzovic. If he has got the ability to take guys down, he's got a decent wrestling background, although his takedown accuracy isn't particularly high. I think it's less than 20% in the UFC, but he can take his opponents down. We saw that against Scott Holtzman. He took him down on a number of occasions, and yeah, if he throws in takedowns or just even takedown attempts every now and then, I think that's going to really disrupt Polo Reyes' striking, and I think it's going to really get him thinking twice about overcommitting with those power shots, which will then, I think, leave openings for Dober on the feet, as well as the possibility of that takedown. Dober's got a really good gas tank as well. He's a big guy for the weight class, but he trains up at Elevation Fight Team, I believe, in Denver. Obviously that high altitude training, and we saw in the Camacho fight, I think between the two of them, there's something ridiculous, like 300 significant strikes landed in the course of the fight, or thrown, and he can go hard for 3 rounds, and he does slow down slightly, but nothing alarmingly or of any major concern. And yeah, for that reason, I do think Drew Dober is going to win this fight. I think, like I say, if he does just fight a little bit smarter in this fight, and just threaten with the takedown, or fully commit to a couple of takedown attempts, and especially if he gets Reyes down and can get Reyes on his back for half a round or anything like that, I think that's going to really play into his favour. The rest of the fight, where he's not attempting or trying to take him down, I can see the two of them just standing there and brawling, man. And Dober's a tough guy to put away. I don't think he's lost any fights via strikes in his career, or if he has, he going back to the very early days of his fighting career. He's a tough guy. He can take heavy shots. We saw that in the Camacho fight as well. So yeah, I don't think Polo Reyes is going to knock him out. I don't think you tend to often see Dober lose fights via submission. That Dariush fight and the Olivier Aubin-Mercier fight come to mind, and I don't think Polo Reyes has got the submission game in his toolbox to be able to take Dober down and submit him. So ultimately, it's going to be a case of whether Reyes can knock him out or not, because I think Dober, over the course of 3 rounds, will land heavier strikes. Will be pressing forward. The more out of the two of them, will look the more aggressive in the judges' eyes. And I think this fight is going to go to a decision. Like I said, I think it's going to be a back and forward slugfest, but I do think Drew Dober is going to come out victorious in this fight. He may even finish Reyes if he can take Reyes down and land ground and pound similar to Hadzovic. But I'm envisaging it going to 3 rounds, and been a 3-round slugfest that Drew Dober is going to come out victorious with.
Yeah, it's interesting you mention Hadzovic, because I thought this fight could look quite similar to that, but I just feel Hadzovic has got the more of a finishing instinct than Dober. So I'm not sure whether I see Dober finishing Polo Reyes with ground and pound whilst he's on top. But, you know, Marco Polo Reyes is a really, really fun fighter to watch. You know, he's never going to be in a boring fight for you. He'll come out there, he'll want to throw down, he'll want to throw heavy leather. It doesn't matter if he gets tired, he's not bothered about that. He'll fight through it. We saw that in the Dong Hyun Ma fight, which is an amazing fight for anybody that's still never seen that. Go and watch it, you know, thank me later. But yeah, he's a really fun fighter, but unfortunately I've come to the conclusion that he may not be UFC caliber, and it's a bit of a shame because, you know, like I say, he's good to watch, he's exciting, and I hope that alone keeps him in the UFC because, you know, I don't like it when exciting fighters get cut just because, you know, they've lost a few fights. But you know, you do look at his record and his best win. You're either talking between Dong Hyun Ma, which is back in 2016, or Matt Frivola last year. So, you know, when those are your best wins, you know, your record's not all too impressive. And then you go and look at Drew Dober's record. You know, he's beaten John Tork, Frank Camacho, Scott Holtzman. You know, I even like Jason Gonzalez as well, and he starched him in round one. So he's got the far better resume. Drew Dober's also a junior Muay Thai world champion. He's also moved to Team Elevation. Well, he did that a few fights ago, but, you know, he's working a lot on his wrestling up there. So now you've got a junior Muay Thai world champion and now a guy that's training wrestling with some really, really good guys, including, funnily enough, Curtis Blades, and doing it at Elevation as well. So, and when I say elevation, I mean physical elevation, not extreme elevation, you know, at high altitude. So he's getting all the good work around him. He's a fighter that's developing. I think that it'd be daft to get into a brawl. I think if Polo Reyes can draw Dober into that, and I did read in an interview that Dober said he's going to bring an exciting fight. Obviously, always take what fighters say in pre-fight interviews with a pinch of salt. But if Polo Reyes can draw him into that brawl, he's got every chance of knocking Dober out, or at least hurting him so badly that he tires him and then he can take over the fight. So, in my opinion, that's what Polo Reyes should be doing. He should be trying to invite Dober into this brawl. And I actually think Dober's gonna strike with him for the majority of the fight while it's going okay. I think that if Polo Reyes starts beating him to the punch first and starts racking up a little bit of volume, more than what Dober's giving back, I think we'll then see Dober use his angle, start cutting off the cage, and then level changing and taking the fight to the mat. But this is ultimately the reason why I'm picking Dober to win the fight, because I do think he can win. I think he's got multiple paths to victory, is what I'm trying to say. I feel on the feet he's definitely way more technical. I think he's quicker and more accurate with his strikes, and he mixes in kicks well. So I do think that if he stays smart and uses a little bit of fight IQ, manages the fight well, uses his technique opposed to wanting to land that knockout shot, I think that he can beat Polo Reyes on the feet. But then, like I say, if it isn't going his way for whatever reason, he can just level change. He'll take Polo Reyes down. He'll be absolutely fine on top. There'll be no threat of a submission or anything like that. So I do feel like it's a good fight for Dober to get the win. Like I say, I'm not convinced that he does get the finish. I think if he tries to get the finish on the feet, I think he runs the risk of himself getting knocked out, which he absolutely doesn't want to do. On the flip side, I think if he's in top, I don't think he lands the brutal ground and pound enough to put Polo Reyes away. So for that reason, I'm taking Drew Dober to win. I'm going to take him to win via decision. And now we move on to the parlay piece. And the first parlay piece of the card is Roosevelt Roberts. Now, Roosevelt Roberts is fighting Vince Pichel. And, you know, it's a bit of a sad fight for me, this, because I'm massive on Roosevelt Roberts. Anybody that's listened to the first podcast where I broke his fight down up until now, follows me on Twitter, I genuinely think he's the brightest prospect right now in the UFC. And I don't think I mean, he's going to take an L. He's 8-0. First L time is going to be coming up at some point. I just don't think it's this fight. I love his game, man. Like he's not physically imposing inside the cage like he always seems to look, like quite skinny and small, but man, his skills are fucking legit. He's initially when I first started watching tape on him, it was his wrestling, it was his ability to grab a choke from more or less any position, and that it's awesome to have that in your arsenal, because fighters that do like going to the mat, if they do take Roberts down to the mat, Roberts is a good grappler, again defensively and offensively as well. But to take somebody down to the mat, you've got to get close to him, and whenever your neck is anywhere near Roosevelt Roberts, he's always got the chance of wrapping something up and tightening it instantly. It's sort of like his specialist weapon in mixed martial arts. I love it. It's one of those weapons that just deters other fighters from really playing a mixed martial arts game against him. So I like it. And then you're thinking to yourself, well, what's his striking like? You know, his wrestling's good, his grappling's good, he's got this secret weapon choke submission from pretty much any angle. You know, what's his striking like? And actually, his striking is fucking very, very good. He's got a nice jab. He backs it up with straight hands as well. Nice 1-2s. He moves really well backwards. His recognition of danger is just unbelievable. He'll very rarely put himself in a position where someone's going to unload a big punch on him. He does obviously get hit. This is combat sports, and probably the most brutal combat sport. So you are going to get hit on the chin. That's just the nature of mixed martial arts. So, but he's got a good chin. You know, we've not seen him hurt at all. But like I say, his movement and his combinations, his 1-2, everything just looks polished and sharp, which is scary for an 8-0 dude that at 25 years old. He really looks like he's got the complete game. Now moving over to Vince Pichel. Vince Pichel is a fighter that I also like, and this is why I said it's quite a sad fight. I like Vince Pichel a lot. He's got good takedowns, explosive. He's got power in his hands, but I just feel in this fight he's going to be outmatched. I feel that he's gotten away with some of his previous wins, with just rinse and repeat takedowns, but again, like I've already mentioned with Roosevelt Roberts and the submission threat, Vince Pichel likes to really get in on a double leg or a single leg and lift his opponent up. And while you're doing that sort of shit, I'm telling you, it's going to be easy for someone, especially a neck submission specialist, to wrap an arm around your neck and really put you in danger. So I think that Vince will be brave to shoot. I think even if he does shoot and he gets a takedown, it's not a wrap from there. I think Roberts can get straight back up. And if he keeps trying to rinse and repeat it, it's going to be a numbers game for this submission, because eventually Roberts is gonna catch one on you. If he misses the first, he might miss the second, might miss the third. But like I say, it's a numbers game. Eventually he'll get one. So it's Vince Pichel's going to be running the risk if he really tries to get his wrestling game going. And then you look at his striking. His volume's not that great. He does pack power. He does tend to wait for that big punch. Is it possible that he lands a big punch on the jaw of Roosevelt and knocks him out? Absolutely. But then, like I mentioned a few weeks ago with Alex Rakic and Jimmy Manuwa, you know, it then ultimately becomes a puncher's chance. And, you know, you sort of can't really favour that guy when the other guy is so much more technical. I think Roosevelt's faster. I think his combinations are better. I think his movement's better. I think his distance management is better. And Vince Pichel's like 36, 37 now, man. He's getting on a little bit. He looks quite old as well in his recent training pictures. So
don't let him hear you say that.
No, for sure. But 11-2 as well. It's not as if he's like a 30-fight veteran. So I genuinely think from an experience point of view, there's not a lot in it. And like I say, Roosevelt's younger, fresher. I think he's a sharper fighter on the feet, on the mat. I like him a lot, man. And like I say, no disrespect to Vince Pichel. He's a fighter that I've loved watching for years. But I just think he's outgunned wherever this fight goes. And yeah, for that reason, Roosevelt Roberts is the first parlay piece. He's currently sitting at about minus 250. That price does actually seem to be getting better. So if you do like it, just hold on a couple of days, see where it goes. But I think it's a solid parlay piece. John, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. So I really like Roosevelt Roberts. We spoke about him in some detail before the Thomas Gifford fight. You've covered many of the points that we spoke about then and that are echoed after seeing that victory. And I think it was good for him to go to a decision against Gifford and get the 3 rounds under his belt in the UFC. Obviously, we saw him get the win in Dana White's Contender Series, second round rear naked choke. Then he got that nasty standing guillotine that you talked about, that special weapon of his against Darrell Horcher in the first round, where he was literally lifting Horcher off his feet and as he was choking him out. And I think it was good to go 3 hard rounds. Gifford was he's an action kind of guy. He kept pushing the pace, and every time Roosevelt Roberts took him down, he was throwing up submissions off his back, and Roberts was having to concentrate for the entirety of those 15 minutes, work his way out the submission attempts. I think there was a couple of decent triangle attempts and an armbar or two, if I remember rightly.
But he flipped him off after the armbar as well.
Yeah, he did, didn't he? Yeah. But he looked very composed in there. He didn't panic or anything like that. And for me, that's Vince Pichel's main path to victory. I think if he gets taken down and possibly he's got decent grappling, if he tries to work a submission, maybe he could catch Roberts in something, but I don't envisage it because of what we just spoke about, how calm and how mature Roberts looked, and how he looked to have that submission defense game locked down. And one thing I did like about Roberts, which you've already alluded to, we spoke about his striking, his movement. He can fight off his back foot. I also like that he can land takedowns off his back foot. A couple of times against Gifford, he landed takedowns when he's backed right up against the fence. As soon as he's back at the fence, Gifford would throw punches, and Roberts shot under and got the takedown with his back against the fence, which I really liked. And to add into all that as well, he's got decent head movement. He's always moving his head off the centre line when he throws those solid 1-2s, and he's long for the weight as well, so he can really utilise that reach. And for me, I think Roberts is going to piece him up for 3 rounds again. As you mentioned, Pichel has one-punch power. We saw that in the Damian Brown fight. Brown was landing strikes in that fight up until the point where he went charging in, but I don't see Roberts doing anything like that. I don't see him overcommitting and charging in and risking getting caught with a power shot. But apart from that, I don't really see the path to victory for Pichel. Like I said, possibly a submission if he gets taken down, submission off his back. I don't know whether we'll see that. I don't, from what I can remember of his career all the way back until the Ultimate Fighter, I can't remember him getting a submission off his back, so that seems unlikely. One big punch landing. This is the fight game. Obviously, that can happen, but again, I don't see that happening. And like you say, if he keeps going for those takedowns, ultimately he's constantly putting himself at risk of those nasty guillotines. So for me, I just think Roberts is going to be able to dominate this fight across the board with his striking, his wrestling, his movement, and yeah, I think it's going to be 3 rounds of Roberts beating up Pichel, working nicely with the 1-2s. Every time Pichel comes marching forward, I think Roberts will just circle off or use that nice head movement, or like I mentioned, use that takedown when his back's against the fence. And yeah, ultimately, I think Roberts is going to win this fight. I think he's going to win a one-sided decision. So yeah, my pick is Roosevelt Roberts to win via decision.
And the second parlay piece, another prospect, another 8-0 fighter. It's Alonzo Menifield. Now, Alonzo Menifield fighting Paul Craig. Now, for me, it's always been a little bit tough to fade Paul Craig. People love doing it. I've always been one of the guys that's always stuck up for the dude, and I actually think he's a lot better than what people give him credit for. Still, even in this position where we're sat right now, I know I'm adding a parlay piece against his name, but I still like Paul Craig. I think he's a good fighter. But listen, against Kennedy in his last fight, it got a little bit. What's a nice way of putting it? A little bit desperate, we'll put it, in regards to the takedowns. He was shooting in from a mile out. He wasn't setting them up. It was relentless, and you could see them coming. Now, the one thing that he did add to that, opposed to just shooting in relentlessly, he messed all his knees up as well with burns from the mat, which looked horrific. But rather than just not getting the takedowns and then standing back up and then going again, he was actually pulling guard. and Kennedy was playing in the guard. He was happy doing that, and eventually he got caught with only like 30 seconds or so to go.
Yeah.
It was his own fault, man, and it was just the inexperience that led to Kennedy getting beat in that fight, because he was winning the fight on the judges' scorecards. So it was a lesson learned for Kennedy. But with Alonzo Menifield, I don't think he's going to play that game. And the reason why I say that is I'm not just guessing that he's not going to play the game, even though he comes from the same camp as Kennedy, so they're going to have learned from that as a gym, especially in preparations for this fight. But in Alonzo's last fight against Vinicius, Mamouche also fell to the ground after he didn't pull guard, he got knocked down by Alonzo, and then Alonzo did think about it for a second, and then he stood back up and let him back up. So for me, if you're not playing in the guard of Mamouche, and I'm not saying Paul Craig's a better grappler than Mamouche, I think Mamouche is probably one of the best grapplers at 205. I said that in the last breakdown of him, I still believe it. But I think Paul Craig is more dangerous off his back with the triangles and the arm bars that he throws up. So if Menifield isn't playing in the guard of Mamouche, I don't see him playing in the guard of Paul Craig. And that's going to be really key to this fight, because I don't think Paul Craig is going to get Menifield down easily. Mamouche tried to get Menifield down a few times. Menifield was strong. He defended takedowns well, made sure he didn't get taken down. But Paul Craig will pull guard like we've seen against Kennedy. He will try and do that, and he might succeed. But Menifield will stand back up, I believe, before Paul Craig's even got a chance to start trying to set anything up. Because, I mean, listen, triangles and arm bars, yeah, you can throw the legs up, but there's more to those submissions than just throwing your legs up. You've got to make sure you've got an arm, and you've got to make sure that you're attacking in the right way and get your angles right from the hips and stuff like that. So there's a lot more than goes into it than just throwing your legs up. So I think Menifield can be out of that position before Paul Craig's got a chance to set anything up. And then on the feet, man, Menifield, he might just have to be a little patient in this fight. I think that with Craig throwing the spin kicks and the front teep kicks and stuff like that, I think he's just going to have to be a little persistent with that, because Craig doesn't throw them all fight. He just throws them sporadically. And I think even on a spin back kick, I think if Craig throws that one too many times, I think Menifield could launch a counter from that. And I'm telling you, I think when Menifield hits Paul Craig hard, clean, I think Paul Craig's going to go out. If he doesn't go out straight away, I think Menifield lets him back up while he's still rocked, and I think he hits him again while he's still rocked and eventually knocks him out. Ultimately, that's how I see the fight going down. It's just very, very key in this fight that Menifield keeps those fundamentals on the takedown defense, and if Craig pulls guard, he doesn't go down with him, or if he's forced down, he forces his way back up instantly. As long as he's got those two things on point, I don't see him losing the fight. I've seen previous footage in tape, as I've already mentioned, against other good grapplers, that Alonzo will do the things that I think he's going to do. So for that reason, I do think he's a good parlay piece. He is sort of sitting at the minus 300 mark. But again, parlaying it with Roosevelt Roberts at sort of 245, minus 250 right now, you can get a good combined price. I like Alonzo Menifield. I think he's going to knock Paul Craig out. John, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you. Paul Craig is quite quickly joining the list with Blagoy Ivanov of the guys that I refuse to speak about going forward, because no matter what pick I go with, always the opposite seems to happen. But yeah, I'm hoping on this occasion we're correct. And again, I'm joining you in the Alonzo Menifield camp. As you said, Craig does get some stick. I mean, there was some boos on the crowd in his last fight against Unjechaku.
You're brave going for that surname. I just stuck with Kennedy.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kennedy going forward as well. I think it's taken me all day to try and practice that, and I still think I got it wrong. So we'll go with Kennedy. But yeah, like you said, I think desperate is probably the word. He was like flopping to his back and trying to pull guard quite often. It kind of reminded me of Fabrizio Verdun when he was doing it back in Strikeforce. I can't remember who off the top of my head. I think it was Alistair Overeem when they fought back in Strikeforce, and he was doing exactly that. Every time he was hit with just like a jab or anything, he'd just flop to his back and hope that he'd come following him into his guard. And You can't blame Paul Craig, because obviously that's where he's most dangerous, getting those submissions off his back, especially as the fights get later and later. We saw that against Ankalaev as well, and then obviously the Kennedy fight. As you've alluded to as well, I think Craig does get a bit of unnecessary stick, because he isn't as bad as people make out. He has got some decent kicks, like you said, those spinning kicks. He's got a good body kick as well, and obviously he'll use that front kick. But yeah, ultimately, as long as Menifield fights with some IQ and fights sensibly, I think he'll win this fight, no problem. I think, like you say, he's got to be quite patient. He gets guys out of there very quickly in his fights, and I don't think he'll be able to do that in this fight. So I think he'll have to be a bit more patient. But like you say, when Craig goes for one of those kicks, either the teep or the body kick, or even that spinning kick, if Menifield can time that and land a big bomb, I think he will put Paul Craig away. One thing he can't do is go following down to the ground. You mentioned it with Mamouche. He tried to get Menifield down, and he was working for that takedown for a good minute and a half, 2 minutes up against the fence. It looked at one point like he was going to get him down and keep him down, but Menifield managed to get back to his feet and reverse it and circle out off the fence and get it back to the stand-up battle. And I don't see Paul Craig taking him down. Again, the only way Paul Craig wins for me is in typical Paul Craig fashion. He gets beaten up for 2-3 rounds, and then he pulls off a submission off his back. But I think Menifield will be wise to that. I think he will be expecting that. And I honestly think if he hits Paul Craig and connects nicely enough, times it nicely enough off one of those kicks, I think he can put him away without having to follow him down to the ground as well, because the guy's a beast. He's got very heavy hands. We've seen that throughout his career so far, putting people away regularly in the first round. I think Menifield is going to put Paul Craig away in this fight. I think he's going to knock him out in the second round. Now that I've just said that, Craig will probably come out and submit him, but yeah, hopefully we're right in the pick, and Alonzo Menifield is going to win this fight. My pick will be him to win via knockout in the second round.
And now it's time for the dogfight. So the underdog of the night at UFC Minneapolis is Anthony Rocco Martin. Now, this is one that it could go horrifically wrong, to be honest, because if Maia grabs a hold of Rocco and takes him down to the mat, then Maia's either going to win that round or he's going to submit him if he's got time to work. But the reason why I think that Rocco is the underdog of the card is not only just because of his line. You know, he's gone as high as like plus 180. He's currently sitting around plus 150. I still think that's a great line for him, because as long as he stays away from Maia, as long as he doesn't allow himself to get tripped to the mat or allows Maia to snake his back like Maia does and backpack him, he's going to win this fight very easily. Like, he's quicker than Maia, he's more accurate than Maia on the feet, his striking arsenal is definitely better. The low kicks that ATT adopt, the low calf kicks, sorry, that they've been drilling into their opponents now for the last 12-18 months. Those can play a big part. Rocco did that against Sergio Moraes. I absolutely nailed that breakdown, pretty much bang on. Those low calf kicks came early and they ultimately shut Moraes down. Moraes couldn't really do anything, left him frustrated. Similar things could happen in this Maia fight. I just feel that Rocco, like I say, he's got to manage his distance really, really well in this fight, but I think he can do. He's not a reckless fighter. He does fight smart. In the Moraes fight, Moraes sort of had the same game plan and approach that what Maia's going to have. And actually, that was one of the first fights that I'd not seen Martin be overly aggressive at any point in the fight. He did fight on the back foot for the majority of the fight. He was landing shots from the outside. He was just picking at Moraes. It wasn't an exciting fight. But, if you are betting Rocco Martin in this fight, you don't care if it's exciting. You just want him to stay safe. You want him to outpoint Maia, and you want him to really start putting it on him. Now, I think that the straight hand from Martin down the pipe, I think that could really play a part in this fight, because Maia, again, his head movement isn't great. It's on the centre line. He's got one goal, and his one goal is to move forward in a straight line and to try and get a hold of his opponent, to, like I say, to either snake the back or take your opponent to the mat, trip or double or single or whatever he needs to do. But like I say, I think Martin's got some weapons that he can use to really stop Maia coming forward at ease. Now, if this straight is landing down the pipe constantly, that's instantly going to stop Maia from really pushing forward too much. If the low calf kicks are coming and he really starts to fuck Maia's leg up, that movement is then already slower than what it already is. I had no disrespect to Maia, but listen, the guy's 42 years old, is an absolute veteran, nearly 40 fights. So it's one of those where Maia is at the end of his career. He is naturally slowing down, but his strength that we all know in the jiu-jitsu is still there. And like I say, as long as Martin can play this fight in the right way and just stay away from getting clinched up, use your strikes from the outside. When Maia is coming in, throw that straight down the middle, really knock him off balance, really make him earn your respect, and the fight will get easier the longer it goes on, I feel, for Rocco. I think if Maia can't get him down or get close to him in a round, I think round 2 will be slightly easy, and I think round 3 will be a breeze. I actually see Rocco knocking him out. Like I say, I think the shots are going to add up. I think Maia's going to tire. I think he's going to get busted up. And I do think he's going to fall from one of the straight shots from Martin. Again, at that situation, make sure that Maia's hurt badly before you go down, or otherwise let him back up and try and knock him out clean. Because like we've just said with the Menifield and the Craig fight, the last thing you want to be doing is going into the guard of Maia. My worry for Rocco is he was taken down a couple of times by Sergio Moraes. Luckily, I mean, I bet Rocco in that fight. I think it was 4 units. It was a decent sized bet. Luckily for me, he was taken down at the end of the rounds where he'd already cruised those rounds. So they didn't really play too much of a part. It didn't give Moraes time to work. But the thing is, Moraes is a little bit quicker and a little bit more explosive than Maia, and that's where those takedowns came. They came with explosivity on a counter, so those were what put Rocco on his back. I just don't see Maia having that explosivity and that quickness to recognise that gap, that opening for the entry, and to shoot in with that sort of speed and timing. So for those reasons, I do favour Tony Martin. I think Martin could get the win by decision. I think if he's not getting taken down, he's winning rounds. And like I say, if he really does adopt a good game plan and starts landing those straights down the middle, I think he's going to knock Maia out. So ultimately, I'm going to take Anthony Rocco Martin to win via knockout. He's the underdog of Minneapolis. John, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think the real key to Anthony Rocco Martin getting the victory in this fight is going to be those straight shots and the low calf kick. Obviously, that calf kick takes away the base of Maia, takes away any explosiveness for takedowns or anything like that, and and they also just get you thinking constantly about checking leg kick, moving that leg out of the way. You don't want to be constantly getting thudded in that calf, and then it leaves you exposed, and you sometimes a little lapse in concentration, the hands drop down a little bit, and you get caught in the face then with shots. And Rocco Martin, we said before, has got really good movement. He gets in and out really well, especially with that 1-2 and the shots straight down the pipe, and they are going to be the key to winning this fight. But as you mentioned and spoke about briefly, my one concern in this fight with Anthony Rocco Martin is the fact that he got taken down 3 times by Sergio Moraes. He also got taken down twice by Keita Nakamura in their fight. He got taken down, I know this was going back a few years, and a different weight class. We got taken down 4 times by Olivier Aubin-Mercier, and we know that Damian Maia is the kind of guy that only needs to take you down once, and before you know it, he has taken your back, and before you know it, he is choking you out. And we've seen that so many times. We saw that against Lyman Good. He took him down, got the back, got the rear naked choke, got the win, and that's how he tends to win against these guys who are mid-level fighters. I mean, if you go back through his career, and you look at the guys that he's fought, even going way back, like going back over a decade. Jason McDonald, rear naked choke. Nate Quarry, rear naked choke. Then you get to more recently, Rick Story, rear naked choke. Neil Magny, rear naked choke. Matt Brown, rear naked choke. Carlos Condit, rear naked choke. When he fights the guys who are Lyman Good as well, rear naked choke. When he fights the guys that aren't real top level guys, I mean Gunnar Nelson as well. He completely demolished Gunnar Nelson, who's a very legit grappler himself, and could easily have had several submission attempts throughout the entirety of that fight. And that is my one worry. If he does take Anthony Martin down, he does have a tendency, these mid-level fighters or lower top 10 to top 15 guys, he's jiu-jitsu is on a completely different level to pretty much all of the UFC roster, that he does just take their back and gets the win. And he's only 3 losses since 2014 have come against Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington and Tyron Woodley, 3 guys that are nigh impossible to take down because they've got such good takedown defense. So it's going to be really interesting to see whether Anthony Rocco Martin can avoid the takedowns. If he can avoid the takedowns using the methods that we've spoken about, and ensuring that he just doesn't allow Damian Maia to grab a hold of him, because Maia will do everything he can to grab a hold of him. He's striking, although it's still pretty average. It is getting better, and he kind of has learnt a bit more to move a bit as he's coming in. He's willing to take a few shots to come in and try and grab a hold of you, but yeah, if as long as Anthony Rocco Martin can avoid those takedowns, I really do think he stands a good chance of piecing Maia up for the entirety of the 3 rounds on his way to a comfortable victory. But yeah, I mean, when you look at Maia's statistics as well, his takedown accuracy in the UFC is only 25%, and I know his career, he's had so many fights and he's fought some tough guys. I mean, the Woodley fight, I think he attempted about 20 odd takedowns, so straight away that's going to hammer your takedown accuracy percentage. But you can avoid his takedowns if you know how, and if you play the game correctly, if you've done your homework and know to keep the distance and make him shoot from really far on the outside rather than letting him get in close and, like you said, getting like a body lock or getting a triple, getting really in close on a single. But yeah, ultimately, for underdog on the card, I definitely think Anthony Rocco Martin stands a good chance of getting the win here, and he will be my selection as well. I do think it's going to go the distance because Maia's a tough guy. He's hard to put away, even at his age of 42. Those losses against Usman, Covington, and Woodley all came by decision. I don't see Anthony Martin being the guy to finish him. I think it's going to go to decision, but I think Anthony Martin is going to take that decision.
And with the breakdowns complete, we'll now enter the quick fire round. And first up in the quick fire round, there's a couple of short notice fights. This is the first of them. We've got Ricardo Ramos returning against Journey Newson. It was originally supposed to be against Sergio Pettis. Pettis having to drop out, unfortunately. John, who have you got?
Yeah, it was a real shame that Pettis had to drop out of this fight, because I thought that would have been a really interesting fight. Obviously, Pettis making that move up, but we'll have to wait another day to see that one. Ramos is an interesting guy. I mean, he didn't perform well against Said Nurmagomedov at all. Maybe we've seen his level. I mean, there's a lot of hype coming into that fight, but when you look back at his record, it's kind of mixed. He got that decision win over Tanaka, split decision over Kyung Ho Kang. Zahabi absolutely put him to sleep. But I don't know if he's flattered to deceive somewhat in the UFC, and whether we saw his level against Nurmagomedov. He looked really flat. He didn't look quick. His head movement wasn't there. But he is only 23 years of age, so plenty of time to learn and mature. Journey Newsom, I haven't seen a great deal of this guy. Obviously coming in at short notice. He does possess power. We can see that throughout his record. His last fight, he won via knockout in the first round. He's multiple fights. He's won in the first round via strikes. He does also have submission wins on his record. He's also fought quite recently as well, back in January in a boxing bout, which he did lose via split decision. So obviously he's got confidence in his hands as well. One thing Ramos does have is quite a large height advantage and reach advantage as a follow-on to that. And I think if he uses that well, mixes in his takedowns and uses ground game a bit more, I do think we'll see Ramos get back in the win column in this fight. So I'm going with Ramos to win this fight, and I think he's going to win a decision.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed with Pettis pulling out as well. I actually had a bet on Ricardo Ramos in that fight at plus 150. The line was daft. I'm still with Ramos though. I still think the kid is special. He is still only 23 years old. He is still improving, and like I say, his last fight was odd. It was strange against Said Nurmagomedov. I sort of, me personally, I sort of write that fight off. There was just something not right. He didn't throw a single thing and instead just accepted, body kick after body kick and after strike and got finished. But against Pettis, I thought it would have been a great fight for him, a name as well to get under his belt. And I do think he's going to have a resurgence because, and I call it a resurgence because everybody seems to be calling this a derailed hype train, and I don't see that at all. Like I say, I'm still 100% behind Ramos. I still love his skills, and I think he's going to be too much for Journey Newson in this fight, coming in on his debut. And the ironic thing is, Newson seems to flourish more on the mat than he does on the feet. Looks for the takedowns, looks to be just more comfortable down there opposed to striking. And even though Ramos can strike and he has got good counters, he has got a good 1-2, man, his ground game is so fucking slick. It's by far the best part of his game, and I feel that on the feet, Ramos is just that bit better than Newson. In fact, I think he's a lot better than Newson on the feet. And I think that'll show all fights start standing. I think once Newson realises he's outmatched on the feet, I think he's going to try and look for other avenues. And I think other avenues means trying to get Ramos down to the mat. And I think Ramos is just going to fucking roll all over him. So I've got Ramos to win. I'm going to take him to win via submission. Now, in the next quick-fire fight, again, another short-notice fight, we've got Eryk versus Vinicius Mamouche, who we mentioned earlier on. Vinicius Mamouche originally supposed to be fighting Dolidze. Dolidze pulling out for an undisclosed reason. Anders stepping in on short notice. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I do like Eryk, given the fact that he will just step up and fight against anybody. I know he's lost 4 of his last 5 fights, and this really is a must-win. A 3-fight losing streak, you don't often lose 4 in a row, and 5 of 6 and remain in the UFC. I think I saw yourself mention, was it today, about him going to see a sports psychologist or something like that? Hypnotherapist, yeah, which could definitely help his game, because I mean, there's just something about him. Sometimes he seems to hold back, and yeah, sometimes we just don't know things going on behind the scenes, fighters' mentalities and things like that going into fights. So I'm sure it can only do in the world of good going into this fight. Obviously, he was unfortunate to come up against Khalil Roundtree 2.0 in his last fight, UFC 236. But yeah, I'm going with Eryk to win this fight, to break that skid. I mean, Mamouche, like we mentioned briefly earlier, he's got fantastic grappling credentials, but man, I was not a fan of his stand-up game at all. I thought he was, I don't often use this term, but I thought he was absolutely horrible in his fight against Menifield. I actually posted on Twitter on that night, just before the fighters come out, they do like a little piece to camera, a little shadow box and things like that, and it was just it was horrible watching Mamouche do that. And I'm going to post it again this weekend when the fight's going, just as a reminder for everyone. Obviously, I know that some people take that more seriously than others, and some people, obviously, he may just have not been putting any effort into it whatsoever. But man, it looked like he was just some guy off the street who just rolled out of bed and started throwing a few punches for the camera. And we didn't see much more in the fight against Menifield to suggest anything otherwise. He blocked punches with his face. There's little to no head movement. He tried a few weird spinning back kicks to the body and things like that, but he didn't really seem to offer much on the feet at all, and you can tell that he just wants to get these fights to the ground. I think Eryk Anders will be able to land shots on Mamouche as Mamouche comes in. Eryk Anders has got power in his hands, and I think it's going to finish similarly to the Mamouche fight against Menifield. I think Anders is going to land something eventually if Mamouche keeps blocking those punches with his face, and Anders will patiently not jump into the guard and risk getting submitted, but he'll patiently work the ground and pound and put Mamouche away. So I'm going with Eryk Anders to win this fight via knockout.
Yeah, Anders is having a bit of a rough time of it at the minute, but I actually don't think he's a bad fighter. Now, from Mamouche's point of view, like I've mentioned earlier on, I think he's one of the best grapplers at 205. I think when he's on top of anybody in the division, I think he's going to have his way with him for sure, because his top game, he's crushing, his grappling is good. But man, on the flip side, and you've mentioned it, I genuinely think, and I don't mean any disrespect here, because the dude is legitimately talented on the mat, and
yeah,
you know, that's enough to win MMA fights and be at this level of MMA. I'm not saying he isn't UFC caliber, because I absolutely think he is. However, I do think pound for pound he's got the worst striking in the UFC. He's terrible. Yeah. He's horrific. And in his last fight against Menifield, I actually picked him to win because I thought that he'd be able to get away with his striking, but actually what that fight showed me is his striking was much worse than I originally thought it was. Slow, plodding movement, coming forward in straight lines, doesn't move his head on the centre line. He's slow to react as well, so when Menifield was throwing punches, he seemed to only see the punches once it hit him in the eye, you know what I mean? I genuinely think that the skill discrepancy is completely with Anders on the feet. No matter how good Mamouche is on the ground, he's so terrible on the feet. And what's key in this fight for me is that Anders can defend a takedown. Anders is much bigger and stronger at light heavyweight, less depleted as well, so he's going to have the energy and the strength to match Mamouche physically, in my opinion, because Mamouche is big and strong himself, but I do think physically Anders can match him. But the key thing in this fight is Anders is a southpaw fighter, so with that head on the centre line of Mamouche, little movement, walking in straight lines, doesn't react very, very quickly at all. And I'm telling you, that straight left down the pipe is going to be there for Anders all night. And I actually think that's what's going to end up crushing Mamouche. I think Anders is going to land those straight lefts. I think one of them's going to knock him out. So I've got Eryk Anders to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. Now, in the next quick-fire fight, we've got the returning Jared Gordon versus Dan Moret. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I really like I like Jared Gordon, mainly due to his backstory. I think it's fantastic. Obviously, he's mentioned it many times before on social media and things like that. His drug addiction, and he's got over it to get to where he is today. And man, he's an exciting fighter as well. He's not afraid to back down from a scrap. We saw that against Joaquim Silva in his last fight. That was a real back and forth. Both guys throwing bombs at each other. I know he's on a 2-fight skid at the moment, but yeah, I do like Jared Gordon. I do think his aggression will win him a lot of fights, and I do think he'll win this fight against Dan Moret, who's also coming into the fight off the back of 2 losses against Alex White and Gilbert Burns. Obviously coming in against Gilbert Burns for UFC debut, tough. He lost in the second round. He fared okay in the first round, but unfortunately for Moret, I think he's more comfortable on the ground, and obviously you don't want to go to the ground with Burns, which gave Burns a very good advantage, because he could kind of just piece him up on the feet as much as he liked, knowing that that Moret wasn't really going to ever attempt to take down and get him to where he's best on the ground. But yeah, I think Jared Gordon's aggression, the fact that he can also mix in takedowns, we've seen that in his fights. He's not afraid to mix in a takedown or two with his strikes and really get you thinking and keep you constantly on your toes. I don't think he'll go for a massive amount of takedowns, given the fact that I think Moret is strongest on the ground. But yeah, in that last fight, he landed 3 takedowns on Silva, landed a couple against Hakran Diaz and 4 against Michel Canones as well. So he, along with his aggression, he has got takedowns in his locker. But I just think the fact that his striking aggression will be too much for Moret. I think he's going to he's going to constantly flurry him. He's going to constantly be in his face, and I think he's going to constantly push the pace. And ultimately, I do think he's going to finish Moret as well. I think he's going to as it goes into the deeper rounds, I think he's going to keep landing shots, and eventually the cumulative damage will take over, and I think he'll wobble Moret and then put a beating on him until the referee stops his fight. So I'm going with Jared Flash Gordon to win this fight, and I think he'll win by TKO in round 3.
Yeah, Dan Moret has got advantages physically, so he's going to be taller, he's going to be longer. Strength-wise, I'm not too sure. I may give him the strength advantage as well, but ultimately when it comes down to skills, I think Jared Gordon is definitely the more skilled fighter everywhere. But because of the physical advantage that Dan Moret's got, I feel that the only way Dan Moret can win this fight is by doing what he did a lot against Alex White in his last fight, just by pinning Jared Gordon up against the cage and just doing minimal things so the referee don't split him up, and just wasting the clock down, and ultimately being the only fighter that's looking positive on the judges' scorecards, as Gordon in that scenario would have his back to the cage constantly. But that's not a legitimate path to victory for me. You know, it's a possibility, but you mentioned it best, John, with the aggression and striking, because if Dan Moret's going backwards, if Gordon can keep pushing him backwards, then Moret won't really have too much of an answer for it. He's more of a grappler than he is a striker. I don't think he'll be able to counter though that sort of onslaught from Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon will pack punches to the body, to the head, and in combinations as well. I actually really like the guy as well. But yeah, I feel that Gordon does that to most fighters that don't have an answer for the aggression, and he will be the one pushing forward. And if he's not, he'll recognise it and he'll switch something up. He'll get an angle, he'll get an exit from backing up and just start pushing forward. He'll adjust inside the cage. So I like Gordon to win in this fight. I'm not sure how he gets it done actually. I wouldn't be surprised with a decision, completely just out voluming Moret over 3 rounds. But if he can get Moret to the ground and advance to sort of like half guard, or maybe even get side control, or maybe mount, I do think that he can land some strikes on him. And if he lands 1 or 2 that hurts Moret and turtles him up, he'll just keep piling on those shots on the ground until the referee splits it. And ultimately, I am going to go with that option. I do think that Jared Gordon does get the job done via TKO, more likely ground and pound. Wouldn't, he can do it on the feet as well, though. As well, I just feel that Gordon's got different ways to win this fight. I'm picking Gordon to win. I'm going to take him to win via TKO. Now, in the next quick fire fight, we've got Emily Whitmire versus the newcomer Amanda Ribas. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I was very impressed with Emily Whitmire in her last fight against Alexandra Albu. Albu's dangerous on the feet, although she may not be defensively the best, and is hittable. She's still dangerous and has good output herself from her offensive striking. So I was impressed with Whitmire's game planning and an IQ to get her out there quickly. Shot for a takedown within, I think it was about 12 seconds. Got her down just as Albu tried to get back to the feet. She quickly jumped on that back and locked in the rear naked choke early to get a big win. And yeah, she impressed me. And Amanda Ribas, it's hard to really tell what level she's at. I watched her last fight against Jennifer Gonzalez, and she won it 42 seconds into the second round via ground and pound from the mount. And Jennifer Gonzalez, I wasn't impressed with at all. She herself had literally no head movement whatsoever. She just kind of walking into punches. Gonzalez did spend a bit of time on top early in the first round as well, before Ribas kind of got going. I think Ribas will be more physically imposing in there. I think she's the stockier and a more muscly fighter, but Whitmire does have the height and reach advantage. Ultimately, I'm going with Emily Whitmire to win this fight. I think she'll use that range to her advantage. I wasn't overly impressed with Ribas. She was a bit wild with the strikes against Gonzalez, although she did land several of those head and arm throws over Gonzalez, and which led to the opportunities for the ground and pound. I'm not 100% sure on what I saw of her. Obviously, the fight before that, she lost to Poliana Viana as well. who that's going back several years, 2015. I mean, her last fight was only in 2016, so she hasn't fought for 3 years as well, which you also have to take into consideration. But ultimately, I'm going with Emily Whitmire to win this fight. I think she'll be able to take Ribas down. Ribas got taken down in the last fight against Gonzalez. I think Whitmire might be able to do the same. I think Whitmire will use her reach advantage as well, especially added into the fact that Ribas hasn't fought for 3 years. It's a UFC debut. I think that you got to take all those things into consideration, and ultimately then I'm going to be picking Emily Whitmire. I think she wins via decision.
Yeah, I like Emily Whitmire as well. She trains out of Extreme Couture, and she's really developing under them as well. When she first came into the UFC, I don't think she was anything special at all, and I actually thought she was going to be one of those fringe fighters that ends up coming in, having a couple of fights, not doing that great, contract expiring, and the UFC just sending her back to Invicta. But actually, like I say, I'm really surprised. I was wrong. She's developing, and she's looking really good. Her striking is still somewhat to be desired, but again, something that is improving and is developing. But it's really a takedowns and a top control and a grappling that's really looking quite sharp at the minute. The only worry that I have is Whitmire's been submitted a few times by armbar. And when Ribas has been taken down, she throws her legs up for the arm bars and the triangles. Yeah. She doesn't have many submissions off her back though, so it's sort of one of those where it's a concern, but how much of a concern is it? You can't be really too sure. Like I say, all I know is Ribas throws the legs up for those types of submissions, and those types of submissions are something what Whitmire's been caught with a few times before, so it is something that Whitmire could have worked on. But ultimately, I think the striking may edge Ribas just, but I actually think that plays into Whitmire's game, because I think she'll realise that she may just be getting slightly outgunned on the feet and start to look to take the fight to the mat, which is where I believe she'll shine. For Whitmire, though, it's key. Get her down to the mat, pass guard. Like that's what she needs to do. Just first and foremost, before anything else, pass the guard so those legs can't come up. I do like Whitmire to win this fight. I think she'll score takedowns throughout 3 rounds. Not quite sure she'll finish her, so for that reason, I'm going to take Emily Whitmire to win. I'm going to take her to win by decision. Now, in the next quickfire fight, we've got Maurice Green versus Junior Albini. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I think we're going to be saying bye-bye, baby, after this fight. I think Junior Albini is going to suffer his 4th straight defeat. Obviously, in his last fight against Jairzinho, he had a good first round, utilised a clever game plan in taking Jairzinho down, but ultimately succumbed to Jairzinho's brutal strikes and landed a nice little combination, finishing it off with a head kick to put him away. Yeah, I think in this fight, I think Maurice Green he's just a massive physical specimen, 6'7", big guy. His last weigh-in, I think, was right on the limit pretty much. I think he's just under the 265 pounds limit for heavyweight. He's a huge guy. He's got a massive reach advantage over Albini, which I think he'll utilise. I don't see Albini being able to knock him out. Green has a decent ground game. I know he got that triangle choke against Batista at the Ultimate Fighter 28 finale. And then when you look through his record, a lot of his wins have come via arm triangle or triangle chokes. It wouldn't surprise me again if he took Albini down and look for one of those chokes again, because he's got those such long limbs which really help you with things like the arm triangle choke. Yeah, I just don't really see a path to victory for Albini. I don't think he'll be able to knock him out. I think Green will be able to use his height and reach. I think Green might be able to take Albini down at some point in the fight. And Albini landed a couple of takedowns himself over his last few fights. But I think he'll be putting himself into trouble if he does try and take down Green, because, like I said, Green is dangerous on his back as well, like we saw with that triangle. So yeah, I just think Green is going to be he's the bigger, stronger, more imposing fighter. I think he has more paths to victory than Albini does, and for that reason, I think Green is going to win this fight. I don't know if he does finish Albini. I don't know whether he gets him out of there possibly takes him down in one of the later rounds and works for that submission. But Albini's he's still a tough dude. But yeah, I'm going to go with Green to win by decision. I think he's going to go the distance. But yeah, I think Green is going to dominate, and I think he's going to win a decision and Albini's fourth straight loss.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I don't think it's really cut clear. You know, I don't really know what to make of Albini still. Like, it's his fourth fight in the UFC. Like, he's either a fraud or he's just got beaten by much better opposition and he's actually okay. And you know, he'll never be at the top of the division. So. Yeah, like I say, he came in on his debut. He knocked Timothy Johnson out, which is fucking impressive. I'm sure that's the first time Big Dick got knocked out. And then his 3 fights after that, Arlovsky, Oleinik, and Rosenstruik. And we've seen what Rosenstruik was about in his last fight, 9 seconds last weekend. And Oleinik's a beast, Arlovsky's a beast. So all 3 of those are better than Maurice Green. So we still don't know. He's a bit of an anomaly in my opinion, but I am going to pick Green for the sake that Albini is on a 3-fight losing streak. Stylistically, it could favour Green. You know, if you like you've already mentioned, John, if Albini takes him down, Green's good on the mat. Green can also take him down. 6'7", 82-inch reach, 88-inch reach advantage over Albini, so he's got all the physical attributes. Albini is a strong heavyweight, but like I say, Green's also very fucking strong. So if they tie up, I don't think Albini's going to have as much strength advantage as he's had in his previous fights. So yeah, stylistically, I think it slightly favours Green. But like I say, don't be surprised if Albini was just beaten by 3 really good guys and he is actually a decent fighter. So I am going to take Green to win. I'm also going to take him to win via decision. And in the final quickfire fight that we don't know if it's a fight or not yet, we've got Dalcha champion Lungiambula, known in EFC over in South Africa as just Dalcha champion. Champ over in EFC, heavyweight and light heavyweight. Looks like a good dude, brilliant judo. I think he's a 3rd-degree black belt in judo. Striking's improving as well. Like I say, he is quite short, like 5'10", but he's fought up at heavyweight and he won the title up there. And initially a light heavyweight, he was initially scheduled to face the flat earther Justin Ledet. Justin Ledet pulled out for whatever reason, probably trying to prove Columbus wrong or something. But you know, Ledet's out. UFC are searching for another opponent for Dalcha champion, so it's going to be really interesting to see who they get, and I hope Dalcha stays on the card because after watching tape on him, I actually quite like the dude. I think he's an interesting addition to the roster. Have you got anything to add to that, John?
No, yeah, I've seen him a couple of times over at EFC. He looks a pretty dangerous guy. Obviously, he got quick knockouts against Alan Baudot and Stuart Austin as well. He can also finish guys later into fights, as we saw against Gideon Drocci. But yeah, I hope he does stay on the card. Obviously, again going back even further. He's got a win over our guy as well, Yannick Bahati, who we know is a dangerous guy. So I hope he does stay on the card. It'll be interesting to see what he's all about. I'm all for more guys coming over from AFC as well. They've got some good fighters over there, and it'd be interesting to see how their level of competition fares against the UFC. So yeah, I definitely hope he stays on the card.
And that's it for this week's podcast, guys. So John, before we hit the Newsome MMA mentions, what do you need to mention, man?
Yeah, just as always, just check out all the goings on Newsome MMA on the website, on the YouTube channel. We have some great stuff on the YouTube channel. Kieran, obviously, last week was at Bellator. This week he's going to be at Cage Warriors. Got always getting some good interviews up there. I've recently on my Twitter reshared my interview with Jai Herbert, who's fighting on Cage Warriors this weekend. So check that out. And yeah, just keep following me on Twitter if you want to talk all things MMA. I'm always happy to talk anything MMA related. So hit me up at MMA and me, and I'll always aim to follow you back as well, so we can get chatting about it.
Awesome. Now for the Newsome MMA mentions. First of all, I want to mention the Newsome MMA website. Don't forget to visit the website at newsomemma.co.uk, where you'll find my betting section, which will provide written betting advice for some of the fights that are on the quick fire round on this podcast. You'll also find the locally famous tape index feature, prediction videos from other YouTubers, fighter interviews, and the content collaboration with Heavy Duty Fight Management too. You can even request colour commentary and media coverage from Newsome MMA as well. The next mention is for MMA Play 365, which I spoke about at the start of the podcast. MMA Play 365 is a brand new betting advice platform that is launching next month, and we believe it's going to be a really popular platform with the content that we'll be offering for any type of gambler. So whether you're in it for the long term or whether you just want some fun bets whilst watching the fights on fight night, the goal is to make money, and that's exactly what we'll be doing for you. So follow MMA Play 365 over on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram to make sure you don't miss our launch offer that will be rolling out very soon. And the final mention is a long-term sponsor of Newsome MMA, which is CBD Life UK. CBD is an amazing product and something that I use myself. Thousands of professional athletes also use CBD too. And at CBD Life UK, they have a wide variety of products to suit the needs of any customer. You can go to cbdlifeuk.com and use promo code Newsome MMA to get 15% off your order. And that's it from us, guys. Enjoy the fights on Saturday night, and we'll see you next week.